We talked at the start of the day about how Global Good Award winners were our living toolkit. And now's a chance to unpack that toolkit and examine the tools, as it were, which sounds very dodgy. But what I mean is we've got some really star exemplars of how to do purpose-driven sustainability, how to turn purpose into impact. What we're going to do, we're going to have a quick-fire conversation with 11 of our winners. All our winners were announced in July. You can check the Global Good Awards website. You can check the Global Good Awards YouTube channel to see the online ceremony that Louisa and I hosted. But we've got 11 of them here. The way we're going to do this, we're going to have quick-fire 5 and then 6, or 6 and then 5, I think. And I'm going to ask them a little question about how they won the award, what the main challenge to overcome was, and what advice they have for the rest of us of how to turn purpose into impact. So, when the paparazzi are done, have a seat, guys. Oh, sorry, you're missing one. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna crack through. We're gonna have half an hour on this group and then half an hour on the next group. So I'm going to start off with Jonathan Mallion, who is the founder and managing director of We Are Tilt. You shared the Gold Award for SME of the Year. We Are Tilt, you're a comms agency, design agency. How do you do that with purpose?
How do you do that with purpose? I mean, I think it's...
Have the mic a bit nearer you.
Sorry, there we go. Hi. I mean, I think, let me just take you back to when we started. I mean, we didn't actually start the business 15 years ago with that intention. We just started out and started... Can you hear me?
Is the mic on?
Hello?
Can you try another mic?
Hello? Yeah, there we go. Put that down. Yeah, I mean, I think when we first started the business, we just wanted to use creativity to do good things. And actually, the purpose we're talking about in terms of the way we conduct the business and the impact that the business has as we go about making good things, that really came about from, I guess, an informal set of shared behaviors that just over time came together to create something that we were like, we better write this down because actually this is interesting. And that created policy in the business, and that became our values and our kind of purpose. So, and it also sort of then led on to, well, if we're doing, you know, the way that we're running the business, it also influences the type of work we want to go out and get. We want to have a positive impact on people's lives. That's the kind of work we go after. And so it's, yeah, sorry.
Tell us, because you won an award,
Yep.
because you're doing so much with purpose. What was the biggest challenge you had to overcome to really bring purpose into the heart of comms, of design, of the agency world?
So I think someone in the previous session actually said that when they actually went for their B Corp accreditation, they actually found that they were already sort of living those sets of behaviours. And if I'm honest, when we went for our B Corp about a year and a half ago, and we went through that process, yes, it was about a year-long process, but again, we found that actually we were already doing the things that we needed to kind of get accredited. So I think it was already inbuilt into the agency and into the agency culture. But we also had or set up a kind of team where it was 3 of us, and we sat down every week and we reviewed what needed to be done, and we had what we called a yes-no session, or what effectively was a yes-yes session, because these things needed to happen to get changed. And so we were going through things, and it was just like, okay, well, this is something that needs to change. How do we go about do it? So it was about sort of just making sure that we had a focused mindset on the actual things that we needed to change to get to that B Corp status and get it done.
That would play into my last question, which is advice or lessons that you'd have for others who are keen to transform themselves.
I guess just start. Don't be too afraid. The whole thing is a learning journey. If you don't have, I said earlier on, I feel like I have imposter syndrome, but don't let that stop you. Just do it. Put one foot instead of the other. You will come up with problems, but just embrace those problems and you can view them as an opportunity as opposed to kind of a problem.
Excellent. Jonathan, thanks so much.
That's all right.
We're going to move on now to your left to Alex Robinson. Alex, you are CEO of Hubbub. You won gold for Best Campaign of the Year. Your campaign was called Eat Your Pumpkins. What's wrong with pumpkins?
Well, the scary thing about pumpkins is that we grow millions of them to sell and then use every Halloween, and then we don't eat them. So this year it's going to be 15 million pumpkins bought and displayed and discarded. So our campaign is there to show people they can eat their pumpkin and then inspire them to do so.
Excellent. How did you do it?
We did it through it's a multi-channel campaign, so everything from digital, social media, influencers, press, we had a cinema advert, we ran 35 community events all around the country, saving over 5 tons of pumpkins just there. There was a lot that went on.
Biggest challenge in persuading people to eat pumpkins?
I thought you were going to ask me about the biggest challenge of the campaign. The biggest challenge of getting people to eat pumpkins...
Well, same thing, isn't it? That was your campaign, to persuade people to eat the pumpkins.
Yeah, so people think they don't like them, but they don't know, people don't even know they're edible to begin with. And then if you carve a pumpkin and then you leave it outside, well, you're not going to eat it. So this year we're inspiring people to decorate, or decorate, as we call it, their pumpkins, instead of carving them, because then you're left with an edible fruit at the end of it.
Excellent. And advice for other people trying to shift behaviour on this kind of scale?
I think if you're going to try and do something on this scale, so we went out and reached over 11 million people with this campaign, it was about having a really defined target audience and a very simple message, and then partnering with like-minded people to help us amplify it. I'd also say, buy small pumpkins, because they taste much better.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Alex. We'll move on to Hetty Dish, who's people lead of City to Sea, won the Gold Award for Employee Engagement and Wellbeing. Obviously, we know City to Sea do great work on plastics, on refillable water, but this is about the well-being of your people, not just the planet. Tell us what you did about that.
Thank you, Martin. So for me, there's a really direct correlation between achieving our mission and kindness with our employees. It's literally not possible for us to be as ambitious as we are without having a kind workplace, and so that the people that work for us have everything that they need to go out and do their best.
And biggest challenge that you have in terms of doing this? You had to overcome?
We're a small organisation, so there's literally nowhere to hide. Everybody has to pull above their weight, and this means that people work really, really hard. And coming back from COVID and facing financial difficulties, like everybody, like every business, big and small, charity or for profit, it's been really important to keep and retain our team and just give the team what they need.
And not every small, start-up, stroke, non-profit, etc., manages to have such a good culture. What sort of advice would you give to people in a similar position as yourselves?
Keep the feedback loops going. It's really important to listen to what people say and to do that regularly. Spend time with the team. Go out, nature, connect with your cause and your mission and bring it alive. Don't be academic. And really explore that question of how is it to embed intentional kindness in an organisation, and for that to be a process and not a full stop.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right, we're moving on now to Al Judge, co-founder and managing director of Alicats, tourism business. You won Gold Award for SME of the Year, sharing it with We Are Tilt. Tourism's got quite a chunky footprint. How do you manage to be different and not have that same Yeti-like footprint?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. So one of the key things that we were focusing on over the last few years is food waste, and the amount of food waste that we generate as a catered chalet company when we're feeding hundreds of people every night. And in most of France, there is actually no way of managing food waste. It's not collected, it's not dealt with, so it just goes in the main bin. So one day we decided to follow the bin truck and find out where it went. And it goes down about half an hour away to a factory where it gets burnt. And when the temperature is not hot enough in the factory, they add a bit of petrol to it in order to make it burn hotter. And we thought, that's not a very good thing to do. So we looked at how we could manage our food waste better. And we have now implemented a system called bokashi composting, which allows us to effectively compost everything, including meat, cheese, fish, eggs. It all goes into a bin, like a wheelie bin. We add bokashi yeast, which is like an accelerator. It breaks it down faster. And once it's been in there for a few weeks, it's decontaminated, rats are no longer interested, and we can just add it to the main compost. And we then use that compost on our permaculture garden where we grow fruit and veg, and we try to reuse that in our menu as much as possible. And so we're now a zero food waste business at the end of the 2 or 3 years of developing that system.
And obviously people have to travel to get to your holidays, as it were. I mean, are you doing anything in terms of incentivizing greener methods of travel?
Yeah, I mean, that is the big challenge. So between 50 and 75% of the carbon emissions associated with a ski holiday are as a result of travelling to and from the ski resort. And one of the things that we're working on now is, this is a difficult thing to take on as a company alone, but as a collective, I'm working with an industry body where we now have collectively got the ambition of, by 2030, the preferred way of UK tourists travelling to and from the Alps should be by train. And we are building an international coalition, and we're looking for funding to help that, where we can overcome some of the structural barriers to train travel, such as how far in advance you can book the train, the ease of travelling across Paris. I came by a train yesterday, and you've got to take a couple of changes across Paris. And there's a capacity issue as well. So we're looking at, as an industry, as a collective, of taking on that challenge, because for sure it's the biggest impact on the planet, is how we move around the planet.
And it's an industry with, notoriously tight margins. What's the biggest challenge in delivering the sustainability element of it?
We found that our sustainability policy has been great for recruiting people, and a lot of people who work for us say that is the main reason they work for us. But what I'm less sure on is how many people come and stay with us for that reason, and trying to identify how many of our clients are really there because of our sustainability policy versus we've just got great chalets and great locations. And so trying to weave that story of sustainability into our marketing and trying to get more clients who are buying what we do because of our values is a big challenge. And actually some of today's workshops were really great for that, to be able to kind of understand those communication challenges and kind of crystallize our message.
Yeah. And advice for others trying to go on the same road as you?
I think once you've got your own house in order, then looking to ways of working as a collective with partners, competitors, I think it's a really powerful thing, and you can have a much bigger impact when you start building coalitions with other people than you can just as a company on your own.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks very much. Moving on to Katerina Hubayeva. I hope I've pronounced that more or less okay. You're Vice President HR and Global Geo Lead for SoftServe Inc., which won the Gold for Technology for Good award. So SoftServe, software with purpose, just tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely. So SoftServe is a company, 30 years old, IT services with global one, but with Ukrainian roots. And our project is Open Tech Platform, which is a platform connecting volunteers, internal associates who are willing to dedicate their time and skills to make the society a little bit better. And during last 2 years, since when it was founded in the 21st, we implemented more than 40 projects already, and 30 are on the go. These are charity projects. They support non-governmental organizations, governmental institutions. Usually, all those projects enhance our social commitments and, of course, fosters a culture of volunteering inside. Some of these projects are really life-changing. For example, one of them is a platform about improving of the quality of nutrition in schools. It was in partnership with UNICEF and with Ukrainian Ministry of Education, and it covered 18,000 of schools in the country. Or when the war started, we immediately created a platform, like overnight, literally overnight, the platform for connecting volunteers across the country with those who are in need for help. And this platform is still one of the biggest in country. So we have many more in the list, in Poland, in Bulgaria, because it's even when we face the biggest challenges in Ukraine at the moment, and of course the biggest number of projects are still in Ukraine because of the situation and the war, but other countries, they are willing to contribute into their communities. And so we have different kind of projects, like restoring the woods, or helping working parents to find them in this crazy pace of life in the city, and support even sport events. So different kinds. There is a special idea behind it to provide diversity of choice for people. And this works like a marketplace. When you have a project description, you can hire people, well, hire, of course it's all pro bono, but people can join those initiatives, they contribute their time, and they see the results, which is the most important for them. And we all see results.
Yeah, in terms of the biggest challenge, I mean, obviously, you know, being rooted in Ukraine can't be easy, exactly, at times like these.
Yeah, so if you speak about challenges, time is a crucial thing here, because when we speak about many of Ukrainian projects, teams really worked in shifts 24/7, and knowing that thousands of hundreds of people can rely on your application or website or platforms that you create for this or that non-for-profit organization or for local communities. You simply cannot just say like, okay, the day is over, I go home. So the time was crucial. It was really the big challenge. Still, we overcame it.
Yeah. And single best piece of advice you would have for others trying to follow your example?
One piece of advice is that make your projects real, practical, and with local flavor. People want to see the results of their work, and if they see that what they did really helped their community, their friends, society, they feel that contribution really matters, this will, of course, keep them engaged. And you can also support them through integrating all the volunteering practices into their daily life in the company. Like we have a special nomination in our annual Soft Serve Awards for the most contributing people in this volunteer platform and so on. So incorporate into your daily practices and let people feel the results of their work with their localization.
Excellent, thanks very much. Last but not least, Evan Bowen-Jones, you're Chief Executive of the Kent Wildlife Trust, and you won Gold for Game-Changing Innovation of the Year. And often when we talk about innovation, if you were in, any of you were in this horizon scanning breakout we had earlier this afternoon, we often talk about in terms of shiny new technology, the kind of thing brought about by the big beasts of the IT world, and yet you won an innovation award for big beasts of a very different kind. Just tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. So our project has been the introduction, not necessarily reintroduction, of European bison to the UK, but it's actually not about bison per se. It's about starting to define a stepwise approach to really delivering on the international commitments that all governments have now signed up to restoring nature across 30% of land and sea. We don't actually have a mechanism to do that, and we can't afford to do it on our own. So the way to do that is to actually bring in animals that can do it for us. The current legislation in the UK and elsewhere is prohibitive in that regard, and it's a huge cultural step change to get big animals back across our landscapes in such a nature-depleted country.
You've mentioned the challenge. I mean, in terms of actually, you know, you're a pioneer in this, bringing bison back, you know, and somewhere as, you know, relatively unwild as Kent. How do you overcome resistance to that? Because there must have been quite a bit.
The amazing thing is, I think if you get in this case, the flagship species right, I think you can overcome a lot of that very quickly. So our positive reach on this project has been enormous. You know, for a local project, you know, in some ways, we have managed to reach out to over 9 billion people. And the vast majority of interactions we've had with all sectors on this has been hugely positive. And that's from local stakeholders through to national agencies who theoretically could make our lives quite difficult, who we're now working with to actually overcome things like, you know, antiquated law that is going to prohibit this from being done elsewhere. If we can then engage with them to overturn those barriers, of course, then we can scale this sort of approach across the country and potentially elsewhere too.
Excellent. And single biggest piece of advice you'd have for others trying to do anything remotely similar?
I think a lot of it's been said already, but working with allies, both, you know, the obvious ones and the less obvious, unlikely ones. So the next step for us actually is kind of using this as a project to build on to national scale and creating an alliance for nature restoration and ambition in the UK, working with the sorts of industries that conservation normally don't work with and communities that you know, we don't talk to, and not just talking to each other, avoiding the echo chamber that maybe, you know, we're seeing a bit of today, and actually talking to those who maybe aren't on side, and creating those alliances has to be the way to overcome these big global challenges.
I think that's a tremendous way to round this off, not being stuck in an echo chamber. I'd love to think we're not in an echo chamber here, or if we are, that we get outside of it some of the time. That's the end of the first tranche, so please join me in thanking very much our first tranche of winners. Thank you. And now, if I can invite up our second tranche, Colonel Cunningham, Paul Beckett, Justin Mead, Sam Powers, Mark Game, Nikki O'Malley, and Karen Lewis. And we could do with one more chair, I think. Have we got 7 of you? Can we have another chair? We've got one more chair coming. So you don't have to play musical chairs. No, let's get another chair coming, I think. Yeah, here's another chair. Lovely. Yeah, if you go around the other side, then there'll be more room. There'll be a couple of comedy moments to come because I confess I haven't met all of these people before. So I'm going to do that thing where you look at one person and the one down the end of the row is the one you've actually just named. So you can watch and spot for that. But I'm going to start with one I have met before, Colonel Cunningham, Managing Director of Mr. Bug. Mr. Bug won the gold for the best product of the year. Connell is a Devon farmer, but he runs a farm of a slightly different kind. Just tell us quickly about that, Connell.
Yes, so we're an insect protein farm. We are the farmers of protein. We've got a mealworm farm based down in Devon where we vertically farm mealworms. We process them we dry them out, turn them into a powder, and we can use that as the protein base in foods. Currently, we're doing the pet trade because that's really where we see we can commercialize our product best.
And what's the biggest challenge in trying to do that, trying to retrain people's appetites, pet owners' appetites?
Yeah, I mean, there's an enormous yuck factor that goes with insect protein. But what's been really beneficial to us is the health benefits. And it's really been helped an awful lot by vets recommending insect protein for dogs with allergies and dietary complaints. It's a novel protein, so they can absorb it and digest it very, very easily. And we have people now coming to us and saying, my dog will not use anything else apart from insect protein. It has saved him and he's fabulous. So that's actually, as I said earlier, people care about the planet, but they care about their dogs more. And there you go.
And single piece of advice for people trying to do something very different in terms of introducing a new kind of product that's more sustainable, that nonetheless doesn't quite sit with people's familiar appetites?
Well, I think if you look at something and it makes sense, and consider, I mean, with insect protein, it's quite simple. 80% of the planet eats this stuff, so it's only us. But perhaps what you can do is take something, repackage it. If you turn it into a powder and you make it just a healthy, sustainable protein powder, then you can transcend some of those yuck factors and actually do something really worthwhile that really is future-proofing our food.
Excellent, thank you. Right, going to move on to Paul Beckett, Director of Bye Bye Bed Limited. Paul, you won gold for Circular Economy Award. You're all about mattresses and repurposing mattresses. I hadn't realized till I Googled it that mattresses are a £26 billion industry. So we must buy a shed load of mattresses every year. Tell us what you do to stop us wasting them all.
Yes. So there's 6 million mattresses produced every year in the UK. 4.6 million of them end up in landfill at the end of their life. So what we do is we take in them end-of-life mattresses and look at what we can remanufacture from the separated and deconstructed components. So we'll make peat-free compost from the coir fibre, the wools and the cottons. We'll work with the prisons and we'll make garden planters and wooden objects from the timbers that come from the divan bases. We'll make garden seating cushions from the foams. So it's creating things that are 100% recycled out of a product that was deemed 100% waste.
And in terms of the biggest challenge that something like that is, completely changing the typical pattern of an industry, how do you overcome that?
The biggest challenge we've had is balancing the incoming unknown waste material. So a mattress will come in with various different compositions, and then trying to manufacture or remanufacture a consistent end product under our Reborn brand. So the demand for the Reborn product is growing dramatically, but sometimes the raw material we can't dictate when it's coming in or when it's not coming in. So that's been the biggest challenge we've had.
And the single best piece of advice you give people trying to do something, as significance of repurposing an entire sector that you're trying to do?
If the purpose is right, if your principles are right, don't bow down to just keep pushing the boundaries of change. We've been called disruptors in the industry, but we are pushing the boundaries, and we're making it known that the historical, traditional way of mattress recycling is not the right way forward.
Excellent, thank you very much. Moving on to Justin Mead, who's Marketing Director of Champagne Telmont. Champagne Telmont won the gold for Climate Action Race to Net Zero. I noticed that you've got some watchwords on your website: loyalty, humility, and courage, which sounds like sort of fantastically, let's say, unferociously commercial in a very heartening way, those kind of watchwords. I mean, how do they inform what you do, and what have you succeeded in doing that's won you that gold award?
Well, we're super humble about this award because the race to net zero is both a sprint and a marathon, and so we're at the beginning of it, and we know we don't have all the answers, and we have to keep on looking for solutions. But to echo the opening remarks this morning on the plenary session talking about sacrifice that you need to do, our position at Champagne Telmont was if you want to be sustainable, there are things that you have to simply stop doing. No negotiation, no compromise. And we come from the luxury wine and spirits sectors where the ritual, the boxes, and all that stuff is super important to drive sales, and we did the exact opposite. We banned all the gift boxes. We said the best packaging is no packaging. Our job is to grow organic grapes and make great wine. My job is not to make boxes. Then we banned all the transparent bottles because they're made of 0% recycled glass, focusing on green bottles that are made of 87% recycled glass. Just by stopping transparent glass, by the way, we reduced our CO2 emissions by 19% overnight. We banned air freight. All our energy is renewable. We retrofitted all our tractors. Very concrete actions to reach the goal that we all set ourselves step by step.
And again, Champagne's quite a traditional sector, to put it mildly. I mean, it prides itself on its tradition. What are the biggest challenges in trying to do something that in some ways challenges some of that tradition?
Well, you say it right. It's a traditional sector is based on equilibriums that are deeply ingrained in people's psyche. To be able to sell, you need to do this. To be able to be successful, you need to do that. The first thing that we had to fight, I think, is the concept that if you want to grow grapes and have a yield, you need to use herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, and chemical fertilizers. And we said, no, you don't. We're used to yields that are just abnormal. We're used to yields just like the guy that's on the Tour de France doped up and he goes faster. That is not normal. And so we said, let's switch to organic, and we're just going to start using all these chemical products. And changing the mentalities in agriculture takes time. But to go back to our first speaker in the previous session, the new generation, they don't want to do like their fathers and their mothers. They don't want to farm the same way. And so we're seeing this younger generation really being into this movement, this change.
And the single biggest piece of advice you give to somebody who's trying to make a comparable transformation of their sector, especially a traditional one like Champagne?
I'm deeply convinced personally that we more often than not are the sole obstacle to change ourselves. We stopped a few things, but look at your own business and what you think is probably absolutely critical to your business proposition probably isn't in the end. We thought that gift boxes were absolutely critical to the business proposition. And we stopped using gift boxes, and our sales are growing.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Moving on to Sam Powers, you're co-founder of the Lens on Life project, which won the Canon Young People's Programme Partner of the Year Award. You are working with, or have set up, I'm not quite sure which, you'll tell me in a minute, a media lab in Goma in the DRC, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I actually, by chance, I did work very briefly in Goma for a short while, and I know it's not the easiest place in the world to get almost anything done, let alone anything sustainability related done. So tell us about that. Tell us about the Media Lab in Goma and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so in 2016, we were able to fundraise, just really quickly, we're a U.S. charity that has schools in both Goma, Cameroon, Iraq, Jordan, and now in the U.S. Goma was, funnily enough, our first brick-and-mortar school, and ultimately, it was, as you say, a very challenging environment to get anything done. But you know what we were able to do, and I think the cornerstone of why we were able to build a school, bring in partnerships, bring in equipment, and bring in local teachers, is because we listened to local voices, right? I hadn't been to Goma before our first time there. I didn't know anyone in Goma. We established a network, not only in Goma, but across all of our partners and programs, by which the cornerstone of that partnership was to listen to local voices, not to come in with a preconceived notion of how things should be. We saw the mistakes of NGOs, we saw the mistakes of others who had operated in the area, and we found it imperative to listen to those that knew best, ultimately our beneficiaries and our teachers.
And moving on to really talking about that challenge, I mean, Were you drawing on experience from elsewhere and applying it there, or were you sort of starting from scratch and thinking, right, we have to learn from square one here how we go about working in a place like this?
I mean, my brother Jack over there, a co-founder, and I were photographers, filmmakers. We knew how to operate in a camera and media equipment. We didn't know anything about Goma. We knew very little about the Congo. So,
do you just want to tell us a bit, for people who may not know about it, tell us a tiny bit about what Goma's like and the conditions there and the fighting and so on?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Eastern Congo has historically been one of the most restive parts on the planet, often overlooked in terms of the level of violence, one of the largest conflicts in the world next to World War II. Millions have died, and conflict in the region is still ongoing. Usually left out of the news cycle, various militant groups across the region are in active conflict day to day. Goma is the hub and capital in that region, and a city of millions at the base of an active volcano, which erupts relatively frequently. Our school is in a location in a very poor neighborhood in Goma, and ultimately it's a very hard place to get things done because there's always conflict, there's always issue, and a hell of a lot of bureaucracy as well.
And how did you manage to get through that?
Yeah, it was we learned on the fly, right? We had great resources in terms of local partners. We had the support of those back home to get us there. We had the support of partners like, Canon in that fight. And ultimately, we learned and listened, mapped out, ways of doing things, ways of managing logistics. And next thing you know, we have a 3-story building there, and it's been quite a journey to get a school moving out of quite literally, dust from a volcano.
Yeah. An advice that you'd have for others who might be thinking of doing something where, their first reaction might be, oh, this would be hopeless, of all the places we can work, no, we've got to cross this off the list. If they're actually going to say, no, we might be able to do something here, what would be your advice?
I would say listen to local voices. The opinions of those that are from a place that you want to work in, or from the beneficiaries of those that are in an environment are the most important, the bedrock of kind of our knowledge base. Also be very patient. Systems that you might be familiar with, ways of doing things, will be completely eroded in about 5 seconds. So be patient and make sure that you have the ability to listen, learn, and move.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to Mark Game. And Mark is CEO of the Bread and Butter Thing, which won Gold for Community Partnership of the Year. You're involved, I think it's fair to say, in tackling food waste while giving some of the UK's most struggling communities some hope, some agency. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
And tell us how you do that.
So we run food clubs, so we intercept food from the food industry that could go to waste. I still define anaerobic digestion as waste. If something's grown and made to eat, then we should eat it. So we take food from the supply chain and we will redistribute that to people and communities that are basically struggling to get access to affordable and nutritious food.
And the biggest challenge in doing that? Well, I mean, the biggest challenge is plural, probably. How do you overcome them?
I'm just listening to you, listening to communities and finding your allies, the really common threads. I think working with people that give a shit really matters. The people that just don't want to hear, don't want to listen, move on. Don't waste your energy. Find the right people.
Yeah. And going on from that, lessons you'd give to others, would it be the same broadly?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe from a personal mission as well. I know everything that we do and everything I do, we try to build on fairness and community and equity. And I just don't think that it's right that even in the UK, just because you're born in the wrong place, you get a shit hand. So fairness matters, and that matters in employment as well. If the people that you work with or work for don't share your values, move on, find a better team.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mark. Last but not least, we've got two of you here who shared the gold for educational excellence. Nikki O'Malley, Director of Corporate Partnerships at Global Action Plan, and Karen Lewis, Marketing Manager at Persil. Gold for educational excellence. You had a campaign around the slogan, "Dirt is good." which is not the sort of slogan that immediately springs to mind when you think of a washing powder. So just tell us how that's applied, how you make this campaign.
I'll let Karen take the slogan then.
Yeah, dirt and laundry don't often seem to go together, but about 20 years ago as a company and as a brand, we decided that that was a really perfect expression of our purpose, which was around enabling childhood development. And if your kids get really dirty and learning something new, that shouldn't be something that's an issue, because we as a product can solve that. So that's the sort of genesis of that slightly ridiculous slogan, but that has come to stand for some really important projects over the years. And the latest one is our Dirt is Good schools program, which was really born out of an understanding that many young people feel very alone in their concerns and their worries for the world. And we needed to help create a place that they could connect with other young people and take action on the things that really worried them. And that's why we've partnered with Global Action Plan.
And what was Global Action Plan's role in it?
Yes, so we're an environmental and social justice NGO working on systems change in the UK, Europe and around the world as well. And we worked with Karen and the team at Unilever to create the program in the first place, to conduct some really groundbreaking research around what we call the values perception gap, which, as Karen was saying, is about the fact that young people need to be empowered and have that agency to take action on the things that they care about. So we don't go into schools and communities prescribing the program to say, today we're going to learn about climate change, guys. We go in there and empower them to have agency to take action on the issues that really matter to them, whether that's racism, whether that's gender equality, that may be climate change. But we're going in with the behavioral science process and program that we've defined to enable them and empower them to take action. So yes, that's what we're all about.
And in pulling this all together, I mean, it's an unusual program, an unusual partnership in some ways, or people would see it as unusual. It probably doesn't feel unusual to you. What are the biggest challenges in actually making it happen?
Well, by definition of being a global scale program, and we were launching bang on COVID time, so clearly that was a fairly huge challenge that we had to face. So the early stages of the program were hugely impacted by that, and we had to adapt and be agile and be really flexible. And it came down to the fantastic relationship we have with the guys at Unilever, and actually we were able to shift and pivot the priorities. But we turned that into a positive in helping schools and communities to bring children, when they came back to in-person learning, we were able to be there and talk to them about this compassion piece and the values-driven piece, and help schools and communities to utilize our program to talk to kids about really, getting into that emotion of how they felt, tapping into giving them power to do something about the world around them. Which is what we were all about, yeah. Karen?
Want to add anything?
Yeah, I think just that ability to flex was super, super important. And I think quite a few of the speakers have already spoken about listening to that audience that you're serving, and the feedback that we've received from both teachers helping to run the program and the students themselves taking part in the program has really been instrumental. The challenge of COVID meant that the scale and the scale up and speed with which we wanted to reach, the number of schools we wanted to engage was impacted. But that said, we still managed to get 15,000 young people taking action on projects. So a really deep and impactful program despite those challenges.
And finally, we've heard about some of the challenges of partnerships earlier today. In terms of the advice you'd give to other people looking to set up a similar partnership, perhaps not an incredibly likely sort of partnership, what would it be?
Yeah, we spoke about this earlier, so apologies if you've heard us say this, but just that ability to flex around the sort of edges of your program, being really clear on what you want to deliver together as your core, and that doesn't change. But how you're happy to deliver that has meant that we've been able to listen to our stakeholders, listen to schools, and adapt where we needed to. So I just say being open to the fact that it's probably not going to look the way it looks in your initial proposal through to implementation, and just being very open with each other about those challenges and trying to solve for them on the fly.
Yeah, I would just add to that and say that Karen and the team at Unilever have been fantastic with us and working with us, because actually, as you say, we haven't prescribed. You obviously start out with ambitions, don't you, when you do these partnerships, and you have that alignment of intention and you have the alignment of the values, etc. But then real life happens, and so actually it's been fantastic to have this partnership where we have been able to have really open relationship and weekly catch-ups, and that's with the UK team and also with the global team, and our team at Global Action Plan are a fantastic group of people who get on really well with all of our partners and work very, very hard to make stuff happen. So that, yes, that would be my advice. Try to find partners that embrace the alignment with you, but also the trust in you to be able to say, well, we think this is where we need to go now, guys. And that trust helps you to create great impact.
Excellent, thanks very much. It's very interesting how actually one of the sort of themes that's emerged, not just in this session, but through the day, has been, as well as having a lot of commitment and passion, to actually have a listening ear. And those of us who are involved, which is most of us, involved in this whole purpose world, this sustainability world, we're very good at talking. We could probably occasionally be a bit better at listening. So I think that's a very interesting note to end this particular session on. So please join me in thanking our panel and congratulate our winners.